We do have to talk a little bit about the draft. There was some rumors about the Celtics potentially wanting to trade up for Mo Bamba, who was kind of my sleeper in the preseason when we
Gonna do it?
thought that there still might be a chance that the Lakers pick would tank and et cetera, et cetera. So let's just talk about the value of trading up. And by setting the table, let's talk about how many picks they potentially have in 19. Obviously, they have their own this year at 27, but they have a little bit of picks for the future to mortgage. I'm just not sure that they have room in the rotation either. I'm almost a fan of rolling these picks back because of what we described at the beginning of the show, which is a simple fact that they don't have the money to bolster their bench and hold on to all of this top tier talent that's coming up either through youth or in free agent acquisition or in trades in the case of Kyrie Irving. So, yeah, there might be some consolidation moves coming, but just from a numbers game, it makes sense that at some point they're not going to be able to get the Marcus Morrises. They're not going to be able to get, well, they might be able to still get a Baines type of player, but you know where I'm going. That depth, there's going to have to come from a youth movement, and you'd like it to be first round picks and not second round picks. However, they could look for somebody at that 5 spot, somebody like Bamba. They're not going to trade up to get Ayton. They're not going to get that high, but they have potentially, they have their own pick next year. That's obviously going to be in the 20s, late 20s, maybe even 30s, hopefully, maybe 30, 32. Memphis, the Kings, and the Clippers. Now, the Kings, they definitely get. Memphis is top 8 protected,
no,
right?
not necessarily. If the Kings pick is 1, they don't get it.
Oh, that's right. Okay. They're likely to get the Kings pick. We'll just say that. You're right. It is top 1 protected. Likely to get the Kings pick. Plenty of value on that pick, regardless, right? Memphis is top 8. I think that will convey. Not guaranteed, but I think that will convey. That'll be a nice pick to have. And if it doesn't convey, it gains value the next year. I think you were saying before the show, it's top 6 protected the following year. So it only gets better if it doesn't convey. The Clippers is really the one that I think has the least amount of value. It's lottery pick protected next year and the year after. And if it doesn't convey at that point, it becomes a second round pick in 2022. So that one's kind of meh. It might sweeten the deal. But if you want to trade up in this draft, knowing how, like just top heavy this draft is. It's deep too, but not deep like last year, but better talent, or at least perceived better talent at the top of this draft. I don't think they can get up into that point. So then the question up to where they actually get top. I think that Mo Bamba is probably where they could go with the picks that they have. Now, barring any players, John, let's set the rules for this right now. No players out the door in any kind of trade up move. How valuable are those picks? How high do you think they could get with the picks that they have, next year? And mostly, I think we're looking at the Kings of the Memphis pick. How high do you think they could get this year in the draft?
So, let's guess where that could be. So right now, Sacramento's 2, they've got the second pick, but they're kind of in the 4, 5, 6 range, I think, in terms of, talent. They're going to lose. They're not going to be any better next year. So they're going to still be a top 5 worst team at bare minimum. I don't see that many teams really going to, challenge that. So if you're in that category, let's assume that they don't win the lottery at 5. And remember, next year is the first year of new lottery odds. So it's going to be even harder for those teams, I think, to, it's going to be a tougher fit, I guess, in terms of the lottery. Is Memphis a playoff team? They could be. Obviously more injuries with Conley and Gasol, but I think they're safely, that will convey. That's an 8. That means that's a 9, 10, 11, 12 area, I think, is where Memphis kind of ends up. What do you end up doing with that? I think, so what does that get? Do you get, let's say, the 5th pick and the 10th pick? What does that get you if you were to trade into this draft? It's a year away, so you have teams that need to be able to sell something right now.
Plus you're 27, right?
Yeah, I think it's a rounding error.
You think you keep 27 and trade the two most valuable picks for next year to get into this draft?
Well, I think the issue is that next year's draft is full of a lot of wings which is great for every other team. Boston's pretty heavy on young wings right now. They've got two of the best in the game. So this draft, I think you got to talk about what do you need. And I know that's not the way Danny looks at it. He looks at what's the best player available.
That's what we loved about this draft. You and I were salivating over that draft for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. They need bigs, and there's so many bigs in this draft. I mean, you go down, 1 through 7, in terms of, and you're looking at, Porter, I guess, is a small forward, but he's a 2'10", 6'11" guy. I mean, that's, you're talking about, you're talking about the type of dimensions Tatum's looking at. Other than Doncic and Porter, basically it's all bigs. It's that Horford in waiting. Maybe I don't have to worry so much about his roster spot when you got the guy in waiting now. I think that's what you look at. I would rather, you talked about early on, and when you're setting this whole thing up, wanting to kind of set yourself up in the future. I'd rather not touch the picks and try to use some of the assets that you're going to have to commit some money to beginning next season, whether it's Rozier or whether it's Morris. I think you've got to use those players. I know you don't want to, kind of tighten up what you've got, but with the market being what it is, I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be free agents for the veterans minimum that you can sign and add in here, or the taxpayer mid-level, if in Bain's case, or even the biennial exception. There's a lot of ways you can add some guys here. And if you get smart for the qualifying offer, you send Morris out and you get something back there, I think that there's a lot of ways they can add to this bench without having to spend a lot of money. And so then you look at, kind of kicking your picks further out, and then maybe trying to do something. I think the only way they get in the top 10, though, bottom line, in terms of your question, I don't think it's with using those future picks and kind of consolidating for this year. I think you kick them down the road. I think you use Rozier if you can get the right deal and put that with maybe the Kings pick and try to get in the top 10. And like I said, 7, 8, 9. I mean, that you're still in Wendell Carter territory. And, according to some of these ideas, it looks, some of these mocks that are coming out, Doncic is a guy who's falling. And he's not a big, but if you believe Doncic is the guy and he's the next something special, maybe that's a guy you roll the dice on. I'm not sure I'm there, right, but some will.
Carter, Bamba, and Jackson, I think, has got a little bit of volatility about where they would go. Now, here's what's interesting. This is the last question, because I think one of those three could potentially be available in the slots you just said, 7, 8, 9. But know that our pick conveyed to the Cleveland, that wasn't our pick, that we got, whatever. Everybody knows that pick. Cleveland has it at number 8. Here's a question. Would Cleveland, and because of all the trades, it's funny because there's always been some wheeling and dealing, and you thought it would never happen, and it has, but would they take a Rozier and a Kings pick and punt, knowing that they're not going to get the LeBron replacement, so to speak, right, if he leaves? Would they take those players, punt down a year, see what happens in the offseason, give us back number 8, and we pick one of those bigs?
I don't think Cleveland, after
no way, right?
Deal, there's no way they deal with Boston. I mean, and you could argue 8 might be too far down. I think you really got to look at Memphis and Dallas at 4 and 5. That I'm not sure how this is all going to shake out. You're right. There's so much volatility. You see Jackson at 3 on some. You see him at 7 on others. Carter is another guy that I think has reminded me all season of a lot of Al Horford. And I know I'm not alone in that comparison, but the
guy's a sleeper too, because he really had to share it with Bagley, and all the question marks about Bagley transferring his game to the NBA. It would be interesting to see Carter outperform him, once they get to the pros.
He probably has one of the lowest floors of all the guys in that top 8. You know what you're going to get with him. He's going to rebound. He's going to defend. He's going to be good around the basket. He's a good passer. There's a lot there that you're going to get from him. You don't have that same sort of reliability with Bamba, Ayton, and some of the other guys. I mean, but that's, if you're in the top 8, you're expecting special, and that's why you swing for the fences.